Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to this morning's 1010 webinar. My name is Els and I will be your moderator today. Today we will explain you how to take effective decisions during your CEN or CENELEC technical body meetings. This webinar will exceptionally last for 1 hour, so the first 13 minutes are dedicated to the CEN practices and the second part will guide you through the practices for the CENELEC technical bodies. Now, before starting the presentation, I would like to remind you that you're all muted, so you do not have the possibility to speak out loud, but you can leave your questions in the question panel, in the control panel of the webinar. After each session, there will be a more or less 5 minutes question and answer session after the presentation. So please enter your questions during the presentation so that we can have a look at them afterwards. Now, should your question not be answered today, don't worry, because the questions and the answers will be uploaded on the CENELEC website later on, together with this presentation and the recorded webinar. Now, CENELEC is also on Twitter, so please feel free to use the hashtag 1010webinar to tweet about this webinar today. So now it's time to give the floor to the speaker of today. You will be guided through this presentation by my colleague Carolina, who is Customer Solution Manager focusing on our members and technical boards. So Carolina, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Carolina Krzystek-Deranter, and as Els mentioned, I look after the members and the technical boards, as well as the technical policy in our system. Between now and 10:30, we'll be focusing on effective decision taking in CEN. I will show you some slides. Afterwards, we'll take some questions, and at 10:30 sharp, we will start with CENELEC. So those of you only wishing to learn about CENELEC, please be patient until 10:30. The reason why we prepared this webinar today is, in fact, because during the transition into the new structure, we have accumulated a bit of a backlog with regard to handling decisions coming from the TCs, at the moment, in order to be able to process all the decisions coming in and as well as to address the backlog, we had to find ways to be more effective, to be quicker. We've been looking at and how the system can be improved, and we have concluded that in order to make the whole process run better, run quicker for everybody, there is a need for cooperation between the CCMC and as well as the TCs, mainly the secretaries, to take more pointed decisions, clearer, and as well as possibly slightly less decisions that are taken at the moment. So I will focus on 4 aspects. Why do we need to improve? Secondly, on those areas where a decision is needed. And if the decision is not needed, I'll give you some tips on how to record commitments and agreements made in meetings. Then we'll look at how the decisions are processed. So that should give you a better understanding on what happens with your decisions at the CCMC and how these get handled and encoded. And we'll sum up with some ideas on how to work together in order to improve the process for all. Why do we need to improve? I already noticed we have a certain backlog of decisions for processing because we have transitioned into a new structure. There have been a change of responsibilities, and we are trying to address this at the moment, but that means that we need to speed up the handling of all the decisions coming in. We have to train new people dealing with decisions, so we need to get better at what we're doing. We have noticed that a significant number of decisions submitted to CCMC do not require any CCMC intervention or encoding. So these are more commitments, engagements made on the side of the TCs, but they don't require our interventions yet. They require our resources to read through them, understand them. So that's something that's creating a bit of a backlog for us. As I said, so the many decisions submitted are not really required by the system. So sometimes TCs take decisions even though they are not strictly required, and those commitments could otherwise maybe be recorded in a summary report, in action lists, rather than in a decision list. We'll talk about this later. We also notice that some decisions are not easily understandable for our colleagues who process them. Because they can be very technical, they include abbreviations, or they are incomplete. They lack work item numbers or some other information, and that requires us going back to those originators of the decisions to get information that creates a workload for everybody. So, when do we need a decision? First of all, decisions in meetings can only be taken on matters clearly announced on the agenda. Decisions mainly relate to matters such as work program. And you will find on the project's online work area a list of decisions that can be registered through that tool. So when are decisions obligatory? When you're creating, modifying a project, when you're launching a procedure, when you're requesting tolerance, when you're deleting work items on systematic reviews, extensions of DOWs, A deviations, Vienna agreements, and so on. So really the matters related to the work program of a given TC. Thirdly, we would require decisions that in turn require intervention of the technical board. So whenever you're asking for some sort of an exception, or whenever a technical board needs to decide on something in relation to your TC's functioning work program, for that we would need a TC decision. So that's definitely a matter for a TC decision. As regards matter not directly related to the work program, decisions are required to appoint chairs, conveners, create working groups, to agree on liaisons with different bodies, as well as any matters requiring database modifications. So these are the kind of decisions that need to be taken and that we need to receive at the CCMC end in order to be able to encode them, to do the modifications in the database, to give accesses to people nominated, and so on. In principle, all other matters shall be recorded in meeting reports or lists of actions. It's not because we're uninterested in what you're doing. It's really because whenever the secretaries send a compilation of decisions to the mail TC Minares, there is an actual person, human being sitting there who has to read through all the decisions, try to understand what kind of impact this will have and what needs to be done. So please bear that in mind, that if you want this person to process your decisions quickly, please only address decisions, please only take decisions and send them to us, the ones that require some action from the CCMC, either going to the BT or encoding information in a database, modifying database, requesting an assessment from the consultant, or giving access to people to different tools. But all other matters, all other commitments, engagements that do not require those, please record them in another place. A summary report from the meeting or a list of actions you will keep, the secretaries will keep. Whenever in doubt on whether a decision is needed, you can always refer to the guidance documents. So on CEN BOSS, the Business Operations Support System, you will find a list of decisions delegated to the technical committee. So these are the decisions that the technical board in principle is in charge of, but they have delegated their powers to technical committees, and they relate to either technical work, so the work program, or the TC organization. And these matters do require a decision. And there are also some other technical committee decisions that the BT just these belong to the level of the TC, so they are not delegated by the technical board. These are the technical committee level decisions. So when you open those lists, you will see those decisions. As regards the delegated decisions, there is another page. Excuse me. That defines the process for taking such a decision, either in meeting or by correspondence, depending on what is required. And there you also see the templates as well as the list of delegated decisions to be taken. Now, as regards processing of decisions, the secretaries have access to the project's online work area to register their decisions. At the moment, it is mandatory to register decisions relating to the creation of new work items via this tool. You might be aware that the BT, the TCMG on behalf of BT, decided in April to make all decisions available on Projects Online mandatory for submission via the Projects Online work area as of the 1st of July 2018. This should help us with delays or additional workload caused by the necessity to check which decisions have been submitted via the tool and which decisions have been submitted via the compilation of decisions by email. So at the moment, because either channel can be used, our colleagues who process decisions have to read the entire compilation of decisions and go back to the tool and to see if any of them have already been encoded through the Projects Online work area. So that's a certain time waster that we believe could be solved through this decision. Now, and when they are submitted via Projects Online work area, this processing is either automatic, so that means that certain decisions, when encoded, lead automatically to modifications in the database. Some of them require our colleague to go in and make modifications manually, so that's what we call semi-automatic, but that is the easiest way for us to proceed. Any other decisions that are not available through Projects Online work area, they are submitted by email. The mail to CENELEC, where our colleagues read and analyze each decision to check what kind of actions are required from our side. And whenever there's something incomplete or unclear, they will return to the secretary with a question. Now, as regards what we call time wasters, I have already mentioned that the ones we identified are, for instance, decisions we received that don't require the CCMC intervention. As I said, it's not that we're uninterested in your work, but it creates a workload for us that then delays the processing for everybody. Please be as far as possible complete and clear in your decisions, because if you're not, we'll have to go back to you, and then you have another email to read and then information to return. A third time waste that I mentioned is the fact that if you submit decisions via the Projects Online work area and then you send us the compilation of decisions, we need to check one against the other. So that's something that that is also using quite a lot of our time. And the longer we process, of course, the later the outcome is registered for you, and sometimes that can have consequences on your planning. So that's why we should work together for us to be able to provide you with a better service. A big step forward is the decision already mentioned. It's decision 13/2018 on mandatory of the use of the project's online work area. It will be in force as of 1st of July. We will organize a dedicated webinar in June. I'm being told it's at the end of June, and an invitation will be circulated shortly. If you already wish to have some details about it, please don't feel free to contact us via the email address indicated on this slide. And it will be a webinar specifically on it will be a little training on how to use projects online working area for all the decisions that used to not be mandatory and will now become mandatory. So if you have any questions, any doubts, we'll be more than happy to help you. What can we do better? I already said you are, and that's a kind request from our side to the TCs. Please limit as much as possible formal decisions to matters requiring a decision. So, other matters you can deal with in action lists, meeting reports. You are free to devise a format. And of course, please be as complete and clear as possible when submitting decisions via email to us. You don't necessarily have to refer to BT decisions in question. You know, you can be really, really simple and pointy and at what you're deciding. Yeah. To sum up, quick processing of decisions is very important for proper functioning of the system. This helps us to keep our database up to date. This helps us to keep our reporting up to date. This helps you to plan your future work, your meetings. This helps our members to plan sales of standards. So it is very important that we can keep up to our timeframes when processing decisions. It's something that we would very much like to improve on our side, and it's very important for us all. Manual processing of decisions creates bottlenecks if information incomplete and unclear. Significant number of decisions do not require any intervention from the CCMC. That's something we have noticed. There will be a mandatory use of projects online work area as of 1st of July, and that we believe will render the system more effective. We will no longer have to check on the compilation of decisions which ones were already encoded, because we will assume that all the ones that appear on the projects online have already been encoded, so these no longer have to be read by our colleagues, so that will save time for everybody. And please stay tuned for a dedicated webinar at the end of June